All right, I want to welcome everyone today to our session. We'll be talking today about the Stratum Access Hub, specifically relating to Power BI and Excel. And so we'll take a quick look at those two connectors today, which comprise of, or they're components of the Access Hub, which is a separately licensed product. So if you are licensed for the Access Hub or any of the components there within, you do get access to these different products and they are available to you. If you're not sure what you're licensed for, you can feel free to contact me and I'll let you know how to contact me at the end of the session. And then we'll take a look at a demo. As a matter of fact, we're going to do that right now. So, ho- what is this concept of a connector and how do you use it within some of these tools. So let's take a look at Power BI. Power BI, if you're not familiar with what Power BI is, it's basically a nice visualization tool that's developed by Microsoft, and it's used a lot out in the world. And we've provided an easy way for you to gain access to your Stratum views so that you can use it in tandem with Stratum. And then you can create some data visualizations that are pretty cool. So as you can see here, we've got a demo of my dashboard built within Power BI. And I've actually built this against our Stratum data. And I've gained access to the views by using the Stratum connector um, for Power BI. And so what that allows you to do is to basically go and get data uh, into from Stratum by using the connector. And here you can see I can gain access to the views that you have within the Stratum interface. So I'll connect to that and it will ask for the URL to Stratum, and I'll just go ahead and copy that from my interface. And then we'll paste that in so it knows where to get the views from. Then we'll click OK, and then it'll make a connection to Stratum, and then it will expose all the different views that are available in the list here. And as you can see, there's a lot of them. So if there's a specific view that you're looking for, you can actually type in a keyword for that view, and you can see all the different views that are available here. Once you see the view that you want to use for the dashboard, you can select it. It will then show you a preview of the data from the view with all the different measures and the levels that are available, all the attributes. Basically, all the different columns of data within that view would be available here. And then you would just load that in, and then that would become available here on the right-hand side as a data source for your visualizations. And that's really it. I mean, that's basically, so as you can see, I can then expand the view that I just imported, and then I can gain access to all the different measures and levels that are part of the view. If we were to take a look at this view real quick, and I'll show you how I can build another visualization here in a second. But let's take a look at that view. What does it look like, and how do we build these views intended for these connectors? Well, if we look at the view that I'm using here, if I go ahead and run that for you, you'll notice that the view is, you'll notice a couple things actually. All the different levels that I have within the view are drilled into so that all the data becomes available within the data grid. So that's one thing that's important is that you include all the levels that you want to include. And then secondly, that you include and that you're drilled into all those levels so that they are available when you import them from the view. Another thing that I like to do or that I recommend is to turn off all the totals. So by turning off all the totals, that gets rid of all the subtotaling in the grand total rows, essentially turning this into basically just a table of data, which is kind of what you want, right? Because the totals will show up in your result set and it'll mess everything up in terms of the visualization. So definitely would turn off the totals, and that way the data becomes over clean, raw, and ready to go. And then finally, you'll notice that my data headers over here for my measures, they're static. So we want to make sure that those don't change, because if they do change, that's something that will break the connection from Power BI to the view because it basically acts like a table. So as you well know in IT, if you're running a SQL statement against a table and that table name changes, well, you're going to have a problem. So same concept here. You want to make sure that these column headers are static in nature so that they don't change. So you'll use concepts like year to date, this year, 3 years ago, whatever makes sense that would describe the column of data. Okay, and so that's you're set to go once you make all those changes. And notice that I'm not drilled in on all the detail, and nor do you have to be. So it's not necessary for you to be drilled all to show all the rows. You don't have to show all the rows here. The connector will get all the rows anyway. So no worries there. So that's kind of what, that's essentially the ground rules of creating the view for the connector. For both Excel and Power BI, you want to make sure that you kind of adhere to some of these rules, and you'll be fine. Back to the connector here, back to the Power BI interface. So now that I have the view, notice that I've been able to build these different visualizations using the views. Um, and I can certainly make room for another visualization here if I wanted to throw in like a pie chart, and I can base it on the data that I just brought in. For instance, I can highlight sales units and then maybe look at that by product category. And so there, there's my new visualization. So really easy to get the data from the view into your Power BI dashboard. And as you click on the different components, notice how that is already in tandem with the other visual components. So that that's kind of the cool thing about Power BI is that you can select, for instance, first choice. You can see the different volumes of units sold or dollars sold here through the different sales reps. We can see how, what that looks like in terms of the pie we just added, what the line chart looks like, seasonality curve. So there's a lot going on over here. We've got some cards telling us that first choice is basically bringing in at about 1.8 million or 1.1 million year to date. The rolling 3 month scenario looks like almost 500K, some good numbers there. And this is what I like about Power BI is that, you can kind of spend some time here on the dashboard and glean a lot of good information. But what you don't get is maybe all the detail you're looking for, and nor do you want it to be present here. You want best practices to adhere to make sure that the dashboard doesn't contain too much detail because then you kind of lose the context of everything, right? Too much detail would uh, not show certain trends or certain anomalies may not be more apparent because you got more stuff to look at. It might get lost in the mix, right? So too much detail just makes it more busy, too busy, perhaps. Not enough detail doesn't give you enough. So there is a fine line, right, between how much you want to put in the dashboard and how much you want to reserve for a drill through perhaps. What I mean by that is that you notice that we also provide a little button here that you can put into your dashboard that you can use for a drill through. For instance, if I were to take a look at my heat map over here for my reps, I can see Patrick and Nicole here. There's some of my larger reps. As you can see, they got some of the larger tiles, meaning they sell more. So if I want to take a look at Patrick's business, I can highlight Patrick and I can see in the dashboard that this year he's doing gangbuster, and last year's his numbers were pretty small. Maybe he wasn't here last year. So how can I verify that? How can I see more data behind Patrick here? This is giving me good information, but it's just not enough. Well, if I click on the drill through button, within the dashboard or within the designer, this is a designed dashboard. The tool is going to tell me, well, this is going to take you to a view. It's going to open your browser and it's going to open this view. And I'm like, okay, that's exactly what I want to see. And once you publish this up to the cloud, they won't, your users won't see that dialogue. It'll just drill straight to the view for them. So what happened? What just happened? Well, I clicked on that button for Patrick. If I go back to the dashboard here, I had Patrick highlighted. I clicked on the drill through, and then it opened up my view. And notice that it filtered on Patrick right there in my view filter. So right away, it's showing me Patrick's numbers. So that's convenient. And then secondly, this allows me to see Patrick's numbers in more data grid format. And then on top of that, if I want to see Patrick's products or SKUs, then I can drill that into product brand and I can get all that detail that maybe I didn't want to include in the dashboard. As you can see, it's a lot of information. But one thing that we can rest assured is that uh, we see that Patrick's numbers are such that there is a lot of sales for this year where some brands that he wasn't selling last year. So he was here last year, but he just wasn't selling all the brands. First Choice specifically there's a big gap here in terms of last year's sales. Interesting, right? So, the devil's in the detail, as they say. So, it's very important for you to get to that detail so that you can get that information. What happens if I go back and highlight Nicole and play the same game? I drill and see Nicole's business, and as you can see here, Nicole's numbers looks vastly different. Nicole uh, is struggling a little bit this year versus last. So we can see her year-to-date numbers over here on the right-hand side, current month, and even the rolling 3-month scenario. She's pretty much down across the board. And again, I can then see for what customers she's down for by brand. Um, and you can then see the different customers that this is a new feature here, as you can see by Chrome that I don't like at all. So, but we'll drag and drop the product into brand into my product into brand so I can see Nicole's numbers and pretty dire. So I can see that Cole's down across the board. There's a couple of instances where she's up current month, but other than that, it's not a good story. So, I probably want to have a discussion or at least forward this to Nicole and just ask her what's going on with their territory. So there's a lot of things that you can glean from the dashboard, but you won't get all that detail unless you drill to the finer detail and get that information. Okay, so that's the Power BI connector, and so you can also use Excel in the same manner. So here we have Excel, and notice that I've got a Stratum menu option here that allows me to get data from Stratum. So as I click on that, it shows me in the same vein as the Power BI interface. It's showing me all the different views that I can import into Excel. So just the same concept, right? I can import some views from Stratum and have them as raw data sheets within my Excel workbook. And from these, I can build visualizations similar to Power BI. So here I've got a data visualization. I've got a pivot table that I can drill in on the different reps, and I can see how the different reps are performing by the different brands. And I can see the heat map here with Patrick and with Nicole. We kind of knew that they were dominating the sales. Down on the bottom, I have a nice chart of all the different reps as well, this year versus last. And the cool thing about this is that if you go into settings for the connector, once you have the data that you need in this workbook, every time you open the file, it'll refresh the data for you. So essentially, you don't even need to go into the Stratum interface. Once you set up some of these Excel workbooks, you get the data that you need from some of the views that you've built, and then you have data visualizations, pivot tables built on top of that. Essentially, all you need to do is go to wherever that file is and open it, and your data is refreshed. So the Excel connector provides a nice um, shortcut to getting data into Excel without having to go to the interface every time, copy data, or click on the download button for Excel. This just allows you to get the data that you need, plop it directly into Excel, and then to build any data visualizations on top of that. Um, if your URL ever changes, IT might move the server or anything happens there, you can always come in and update the URL as well under settings. Okay. So that's kind of it, really. I mean, that you've got both of these options where you can use both either Power BI or Excel. Sorry, guys, I'm going through a little bit of a cold. But yeah, you can use Excel, you can use Power BI. Using these connectors allows you to keep these dynamic. Um, and with the Power BI piece, once you develop your Power BI dashboards, you then publish those up to the Power BI cloud, and then they become available for your users. And they can come to the cloud and run the views. Nice thing about Power BI dashboards is that you can run refreshes off hours so that when a user hits the Power BI dashboard or report, they're not running a live query against your database. So that's a nice feature as well. So, yeah, so publishing it up to the cloud. Also, remember Power BI is a licensed product, so you'll need to think about that. You'll need to think about how you're going to license the product. So there's different tiers of licensing. So I suggest that you research that and kind of decide what works best for you and your enterprise.